Good afternoon to our Inspire Us Radio listeners. You're tuned into Inspiring Talks with Ilhaam, and today I have a phenomenal woman. Her name is Rosie Motene. You might recognize her name and you might recognize her face. She's a well-known activist, actress. Hey, yo, the list goes on when it comes to your achievements, Rosie. So welcome to Inspire Us Radio.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes, so you are. I just want to go through like some of the things that you've achieved in you were an actress in television, you were a producer, you were an author where you told your personal story in reclaiming the soil, a black girl's struggle to find the African self. You're an activist and you also do advocacy. So if you can just give us a quick um round up of who you are from your side, just so that our listeners can get to know you better.
Okay, great. Thanks again for the opportunity. So, my name is Rosie Motene. My three passions in life are women, Africa, and the arts. I operate as a life coach, as a counselor, as an activist, feminist writer. I used to be a TV actress, but with my advocacy and with my feminine stance and standing up against a production company, and I refused to take off my clothing or perform sexual acts, I then was banned from the industry. So, although the acting DNA is still in me, the patriarchy and those who go against feminine principles have stopped me from performing on TV. So that is who I am today. And then also I'm a documentary and impact film producer.
Mm. So, as someone who has been on the front line for over 2 decades, what is the honest assessment of the 16 Days of Activism campaign?
Uh, hmm. How honest can I be?
No,
So
this is
a
an
lot of
online
it
radio.
is
You can be as honest as you want to.
a lot of it is from the powers that be and from the powers that can really make a change. A lot of the time it's been performative. I'm not saying that change hasn't happened. But in terms of 16 days, the initiative was important to highlight the problems in South Africa. But then what was going to happen after that?
Mm,
It should have been 365 days. But also with media and with other platforms is just using to capitalize on that, but actually not making the impact and change that's really needed on the ground. So, for instance, why I was so excited about appearing on your about speaking on your platform is that we need to connect with the community. We need to connect with the grassroots for a number of reasons, because that is where the reality of what is happening lies. So, in terms of the accurate stats, because we look at our statistics, and remember, those are statistics of crimes that have been reported. So even if you go into the police station, we know that a lot of cases aren't opened or they're thrown off the roll because of police negligence or there's corruption. So many other factors lead to the fact that a lot of cases aren't even reported. So those cases aren't put into our statistics. So speaking to people on grassroots levels is understanding, is the impact of what's happening on a government level, is it really trickling down to the community? What is being said on a media and government level, does it speak to you? Do you understand? Do you feel the change? Do you feel that you have been seen and heard? And so for going back to your question about 16 days of activism, is that yes, it will create the awareness and it's done that and we've used that as a platform. But then what's the next step? How what actual changes are being made on the ground? And if we do speak to the communities within the grassroots areas, you'll see that actually a lot of change hasn't really been made. And sometimes there's misinformation through the 16 days of activism. So many years ago, speaking to a group of school children, one of the kids said, "Yes, so we won't beat up girls between 16 days, but after that we can go back to life as normal." So what type of messaging is then put out? And so for now, as an activist, is that we will punt 16 days of activism because that is where we have the attention from so many people. But we know a lot of the time it's just failure and it's just performative.
okay, so like if we're gonna have these 16 days every year, because it's not only a local campaign, it's an international campaign, and we kind of tap into that. So,
Mm,
like, uh, if we're going to anyway have it, how do we utilize it as a tool to kind of measure success also? Because the whole point of these campaigns is for it to be successful and for there to be change on the grassroots levels, so that women don't get abused and women don't get murdered and raped. So
mm,
according to you, like, how would you measure awareness and how can we improve it? And do you think policy changes is the way to go? And like, how would we decrease the crime stats? Because I mean, if they all the policies, some of the policies are there, and there has to be like growth in that area where the policies get better and stronger and accountability gets better and stronger. But like, it's also
mm,
a cultural thing. It is in the household. It is in family dynamics. Like, how do we
mm.
change that?
Mm. I think definitely look at the total shutdown model. So the 24 demands that were carefully articulated in relation to the fails and the successes from 16 days from various campaigns that have happened before. So within those 24 demands, which the president accepted, is that is what you can weigh up and see how has it brought about change. So one of them, and I don't know them off by heart, but one of the demands is then speaking to holding people accountable if they have been accused of they've been convicted of a specific crime, is that they shouldn't be elevated, they shouldn't be celebrated, they shouldn't be promoted, and they should be held accountable for those actions. That in itself is already a moral lesson that we're teaching to the home. That in itself is a moral lesson that we're teaching in which you can then implement in the classrooms. So it's about looking at the dynamics, and yes, the policies are there, but how are the policies been impacted? Yes, we have the infrastructure and everything on paper, but what are the loopholes that the people within the patriarchy are being able to get through? So, for one example, and this is something that we picked up as activists, and it's even happened to me in my personal capacity, is that knowing what your rights are if a crime happens in a specific region. So if a crime is happening in Durban and you had to come back to Johannesburg and you want to open up a case against that person or people, you have every right to open it up in Johannesburg, and then the case gets transferred to Durban. What we found is that we're going to a police station, and that was one of the loopholes that they were saying, and telling victims and survivors, saying, no, you can't open the case. Too much time has lapsed. You're the wrong jurisdiction. You're in the wrong province. You don't have a right. That automatically cancels the person for following up on the case. So it's understanding what these various loopholes within the policies that are already existing. I think, does that answer your question?
That does answer my question. And I also think there are so many gaps in policies, like you were saying, the loopholes. And I also feel like the attitudes of police officers really needs to be evaluated, because people are complaining so much about the justice system and so much about, especially here in Alsis River, a lady got murdered recently and she had a protection order against this man who murdered her. And like, people are saying, if you go to the police station, then it's almost like the policemen kind of don't want you to open a case, so they kind of like make it difficult for you. So like, who are they serving then? Like, your
Mm,
job is to protect us. And like, this lady that got
mm,
murdered in Elsis River, she found them also because she had an interim protection order and they didn't come. So like, there are these
mm,
gaps within policies, but there's also gaps in the how the people are being managed, the people that are supposed to protect us, and how efficient they are at their jobs. And we understand being a
yeah.
policeman and a policewoman is a very stressful job, but that's a job you chose also. Like, yes, there must be therapists for you because you need to decentralize and you need to de-stress, but that's a career path you chose, and there's to be backup for you also and
Mm,
support. But I just feel like there's too much leeway for certain people in this country to they don't have this like lack of accountability. And they always find loopholes. Like, how are we gonna stop this, Rosie? Like, how,
mm,
and especially with men that are so toxic, that's the worst thing, is because if they go into these positions of power, they can do whatever they want to, and you as a normal citizen, you don't have any way to either stop them or to call them out because they have a situation above your pay grade or above your status in
mm,
society. So it is a very
mm.
toxic situation. And I'm not saying all men are guilty of this and women are also guilty of this, because this is also an issue I want to touch on with you, Rosie, because there are some women that are complicit in this toxic situation. And
$100%.
I feel like we all like, yes, we must help all women and we must be, we're all feminists and we must help. But there are some women that you have to be careful of because
Hmm.
they are complicit in these things. So, like, how do you then navigate in South Africa,
Mm.
GBV, femicide? Because there are women that are helping these men do these things, and some of them even participate in it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So one of the things is to go back to about what how we deal with these loopholes, and it's extra work for us. It's tiring, but this is also why I do some of the work, and in some of my YouTube videos I speak about it. So, for instance, one aspect of the judicial system states, and maybe I'm stand to be corrected, maybe they changed it this year, but it used to state on the South African Police Service website that if you wanted to open up to get a protection order, you can go into a police station, you do write your affidavit, and then you take that to the magistrate court, and then the process continues.
Hmm.
What we found is that people will go into the police station and the police will say, no, you can't do it here, which is nonsense. So, in order to avoid having that confrontation with the police, we, as activists and as counselors, we say just go straight to the magistrate court with
Mm.
your affidavit and then make the application there. But before you do the affidavit, because one of the things that sits within our framework, and I don't know if it's like this for the rest of the world, is that if you do an affidavit with the South African police, for some reason they have to write it. And often, if you're not reading it, and this is to do with our socioeconomic crisis and pre-apartheid issues and everything, in terms of educational levels, the language might not be coherent.
Hmm.
So to avoid that loophole, because also going in and doing the affidavit, emotions might be high. You might feel overwhelmed. If you're getting a patriarchal police officer or police woman, they're going to try and deter you and try and suggest you not to open the case. So to get ahead of that is that when you're at home, write the affidavit yourself. Put down as much information as possible before you put it into a structure. If you know the abuse is happening for a while, gather as much evidence as possible. So when you go into the magistrate court, you say, this is my affidavit. Here it is. I want you to write it verbatim. The reason why I have written it is because it's very, very emotional and I wanted to get everything involved, everything on paper. And if they say that it's not allowed, of course it's allowed, because at the end of after what they've written, everything verbatim, you still have to read it and sign it. So it means that it is still your words and you're still consenting to all of the information. Then what you need to do is take a picture of that and take a picture of the with their consent, or write down the police officer's badge. So you have proof. Now,
Mm.
all of these different things are things that we have to get ahead of our policy, our structures. Because if the police would just do an affidavit in the beginning and do their necessary job, we wouldn't have to do this extra work. So, unfortunately, we're in a space that, although we have a great constitution on paper, the victim survivors, the activists, the advocates have to do additional work just to overcome the loopholes that the patriarchy have already set for us.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay, we have to live in this world with men, and you speak a lot about toxic masculinity. But how can we
Mm,
get men and boys, instead of being our competition, instead of being our opposite, like our opposition, how can we make them our allies and make them understand that what they're doing to us, because it's almost like they don't see us as people, they see us as
mm,
objects. And that is comes from years and centuries way back already. That mentality of
Mm.
women are property. So, like, how do we change that thinking and that mindset of men that we are your partners, we are human beings, we
Mm.
are. How do we change that narrative?
I always believe is that what conversations are we having at home? So what are the dynamics that are set up in the home? Are young boys and young girls seeing that they are treated differently because of their gender? Do they understand the different genders? Do they see the different roles of their parents and see some of the roles being hierarchical or slightly higher or lower than the next one? So, what are they seeing in the home? Because that's the first, when they open up their eyes, that is what they're going to get, they're going to consume. Then we can't control what happens in the schools, right? But we can have those conversations with the kids when they get back from school. So what happened at school, what conversations had, and get their insight. And do this as at an earlier age as possible to get their insight and have the difficult conversations about what power is, about how they see themselves, how they don't see themselves, because that ultimately then feeds into what is the entertainment in the home, what are you watching on TV, what books are you sharing with your children, what are you having around the dinner table, or rather what conversations are you sharing around the dinner table. So I believe it would definitely start from there. And then if the other level of toxic masculinity that is happening that you see is brought into the home, are they being held accountable for such actions? Because when they look out to their heroes, they're not being held accountable. That's why they continue doing what they're doing. So we can't control, and this is why we also push on what media is putting out and how media support and perpetrators and so forth. And it's important of setting that standard, because it's always the kids who are then watching thinking, oh well, this person was convicted, but wait a minute, they're headlining idols, they celebrated, they're millionaires, yet they're convicted in a court of law. And whereas if they're going to be held accountable in their homes, and their parents are saying, no, actually, what you've done is not on, and
Mm.
these are going to be the repercussions. Not bringing in corporal punishment into the home, but understanding that certain actions will have certain consequences attached to them.
Mm. I think that is also the crux of the matter, Rosie. Because when it comes to justice, it's always we in this narrative now of that we have to protect the survivor and we have to look after. And yes, that must happen. We have to protect them and help them and with rehabilitation and get them back into society. But I think the fear needs to change from us being afraid of living a normal life to, if you are found guilty and if we catch you doing these things, the consequences of your
Mm,
actions needs to be of an extreme nature, because
yes.
they know they can get away with it. I mean, they go on TV, they go on clips, they go on documentaries, they go and they just talk about all the things that they do and they know they can get away with it. So I think we need
Mm,
to change the fear from us living in fear women, and there are some men living in fear, but it's mostly women who gets murdered and raped every
mm,
day, to the fear of
mm,
them. If we catch you, what is going to happen to you? And
yeah.
also, like, it needs to be they need to be monitored. I think there needs to be a better, like, monitoring of people in South Africa. There isn't enough, because they can hide, they can get away with it, and people all know about it, especially like say in Elsis River. Everybody knows
Mm,
everybody here. And maybe somebody moved around here
mm,
and there, but most of all the foundation, they all know each other and they all know who is guilty. But
mm.
they don't do anything because the fear of what that person could do to you is higher than the fear of what could happen to them through the justice system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, how can
Absolutely.
we change that? Because conviction rates are so low, and
mm,
accountability is so low. And it's not only in the GBV sector, because it filters in every sector of our society. It filters in
yeah.
corruption, it filters in that they know they can get away with anything. So how do we change that? How can we make like the how do we do that? Like Rosie, how can we do that?
I don't know.
It's so difficult. Like I just feel like the conviction rate is so low, and the people
Mm.
that they know, like in Elsie's River, they
The thing
know
is,
if they
more
get caught, if they get
people
caught,
aren't really,
yes.
people aren't scared of jail. So
Exactly.
be and I'm not saying everybody, but most people know, especially if you are connected and if you are powerful, and if your proximity to money is greater than the next person, your time in jail could be quite a comfortable one. So we've seen pictures of people sitting with their laptops, with their phones. I mean, the Thabo Bester issue, we look at
Mm.
how the privileges that what is his name? The person who killed and murdered Reva Steenkamp. I
Oscar
can't remember his name for the
Pistorius.
life. Oscar Pistorius. We saw the privileges that he had in his prison cell. So it's that, but then also the privileges of that. If you are pretty connected, um, the level of corruption that happens of cases going missing, or how to, for instance, when you go to court and you have to appear in court, if you, and this happened to me 2 years ago, where
Mm.
we were supposed to appear in court in a certain date. We all had the same notification from the courts, everything. And then at 11 o'clock the night before, an email came through to my lawyer, which fortunately he had seen, to state that they had changed something, and they knew by law that they didn't have to appear the next day. So with the build up to that, if we hadn't seen it, I probably would have had to go into court. But also, I had taken off work. I had the emotional anxiety that is attached to that, and then of course also had to pay for the lawyer for all of those different times, because the lawyer had already billed me for that day in court. So that
Oh
they know
wow.
all of these different things will impact you, and that is one of the reasons why so many people drop cases, because we simply run out of steam, because the patriarchy knows the different loopholes. They know how to get around certain things.
Mm, 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 mm. Rosie, okay. So if that is the case, jail isn't a scary place to go.
Mm,
Then we need to look at the system. We need to look at jail then. Because
mm,
jail is supposed to, the idea of jail is that it's a rehabilitation section where you go in and then you get into a routine, and when you come out, you're supposed to be a better person. But that isn't the case.
mm,
The case is it's
mm,
just like
mm,
there to keep you there, to keep you away from society and to protect the
mm,
rest of society, and that's why you're going there. But the jail is supposed to be a rehabilitation section where you go in and you
mm,
work on your inner self. And I think we need to look at the jail system itself then, if people aren't afraid to go there, because how when they get released, because a lot of criminals get released from jail and they come out and they have nowhere to go, and then there's also not support structures for the people that come out of jail, and
mm,
a lot of them do the same crime just to go back because that is their kind of,
mm,
that is where they're comfortable now. So like we do need to look at that also. Like the fact is, South Africa is a very unequal society. It is very difficult to survive in South Africa. Most of the people, okay, maybe more than half of the people are employed. So there's like 40% unemployment. And that's a big number. That is almost 50% of the population that don't have any work and that is gonna
mm.
do anything to survive. And a lot of them have anger issues because they come from
Yeah.
broken homes. So like, why are we not focusing on building and like healing our own society? I think also government is so focused on being internationally recognized that we're not really looking on like the children, the next generation. We're not looking at schooling, we're not looking at education, and that is the foundation of
mm.
a society. But can we get into
But you
your
see,
non?
also as a nation, we're used to forgetting certain people.
Yeah.
So I hate it when people say, you know, Cape Town is the perfect tourist destination, where majority of the community don't have access to a lot of those amenities, and when we try and access them, we are discriminated or kept out. Where you
Exactly.
land and you see the disparity in terms of how people are still living in 2025, and you want to say that that city is the number one destination for tourism, but you're ignoring that majority of the community don't even have running water. You know, so we've adopted so many principles of apartheid, that of you know, some people are better than others, and depending on which side of the tracks you are born and raised, you just have to grin and bear that, you know.
Mm.
So it's and bringing in apartheid is that because we've been indoctrinated into believing, okay, the Rainbow Nation, forget about what happened. Yes, we don't want to relive the past, but we need to acknowledge what it did to our psyche, what it did to our mental wellness. The fact that there haven't been proper psychosocial support for communities who suffered from apartheid, men and women, who then went into living and raising families carrying that level of trauma. So that trauma is then brought back into another generation. You know, so we were used to, number one, seeing people for who they are and then ignoring certain people because of who they are. But then also we used to just transferring that level of trauma because that is what we know. So we have these young kids going into prison because, well, it's a lot of the time, and we're not acknowledging, we're not forgiving that. But maybe going and stealing so you can put bread on the table, so you can feed your family, is what you've always known.
Mm.
You know, then what does that type of punishment begin to look like? And I mean, that is where the mess is also sitting. That is where the cesspool is of trying to find, you know, peace and trying to find harmony in all of that mess that was already implemented by the apartheid government, and then obviously pushed through by patriarchy and misogynistic ideologies.
Yeah, because the people in power are still the same people that were in power back then. They just
Yeah.
frame things much differently because they're not allowed to be openly racist or openly discriminatory. But I want to talk about what you mentioned earlier. I feel like people from the apartheid regime did cruel things to people of color. And like it's always this
Mm,
conversation of, oh, you must just get over it. It's a new South Africa. But
mm,
like what you're saying is so important is that nobody healed from that trauma. And trauma carries
mm,
through to the next generation. Because once somebody's traumatized, they are not a healed person, so their behavior isn't of a
mm,
healed nature. So their children and their children's children will kind of pick up on things and what they talk about and how they behave. And so the trauma gets passed on. And that is a very important point that you made is that we are all living in a traumatic experience because we hear the
mm.
stories and we see the stories. And also, you're talking about access. There's some children that, like, say, for example, it is about access control. So, like, some people
Mm,
don't know things. Like, for example, if children knew that there's a soup kitchen down the road and they can go get a meal every night,
mm,
twice a day, and you can go there to the soup kitchen. But sometimes people don't even want to tell them. Sometimes people
mm,
get tired of helping. It is a very, very difficult situation because we're supposed to care about each other, we're supposed to help each other, but they get tired of helping each other.
mm,
They get
mm,
tired of being part of an NGO and being part of the solution because they see maybe all these movies and all these videos on TikTok and they're watching all these things and they want to be rich. But that is those people that have the privilege of that kind of lifestyle. And to get there, you need to
mm.
fix your foundation. But you don't want to put in the effort
Yeah.
to fix your foundation. You just want to skip that. You want to skip the helping and you want to go back. You want to go straight into the rich. And that's where the corruption comes in because then when they get into office, and I'm not saying it's all government, it is also in the private sector, they just go after the money and they don't help anyone afterwards. And that is why we have
Mm,
billionaires coming left, right, and center. And that is not helping anybody in this world. They're only helping themselves. And
yeah.
when people are asking for funding, when NGOs, Tuduzela centers, power centers, um, rape centers, GBV centers is asking for funding, then they nowhere to be seen. Even though a lot of us
Mm,
raised you and now you don't want to help any of us. So like how important
mm,
is it to give back to your community, Rosie? And how important is it to support power
absolutely.
and to Zilla centers and the rape
Mm,
crisis and all these things that help women and men get over traumatic experiences?
yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned power, and I mean, I started my activism journey through power. I did my training with them over 20 years ago. And I resigned from the board in 2019. But one of the things that have been so frustrating for many of us is having to see the shelters of power close down because Department of Social Development and withdrew their funding. And what was even more, going into what you're talking about millionaires, is that when we were with them, when I was with the organization, is that a lot of these millionaires would say, "Oh, we make public announcements." And there was one that even did this video saying that she's going to raise 5 million rand for power, and what went out on SABC. Not a cent came to the organization. Yet a little bit of pull, a little bit of clout, or even just a bit of a 1 million rand of whatever they're doing could have saved a couple of lives. And when I mean saved lives, is that we could have kept some of those shelters open.
Mm.
So it's all very and this is when 16 days of activism becomes performative. So you see people saying, "Oh, stand against this and this and this," but what are you doing when it's happening in your community? What are you doing when you in the boys' locker room and they're making a misogynistic joke against the next woman? Are you laughing at that? Are you enabling that? As you know, you mentioned in the beginning that women are also we
Complicit.
need to be put into complicit in the situation.
Mm.
In the entertainment industry, there have been a lot of enablers who have known about sexual predators within their camps and have decided to turn a blind eye because it's not good for business.
Mm.
And then deemed people like myself as unstable, or blocked them, or try to bring down their credibility because we keep on raising the alarm on these issues.
Mm.
So it's if particularly the incredibly wealthy, if they were to put maybe 1% or 2% of their net worth into actual infrastructure that would support combating gender-based violence, and by that is also education. It's educating the children, it's educating other communities. We would definitely see a shift. But because it doesn't look sexy, because it isn't good for business, a lot of people are shy away from that. So there are many campaigns that I've chosen not to be part of because they try to tell me what my narrative is. And as an activist and as a survivor, you're not going to put a narrative in my mouth that enables the next person, or if it's too harsh for you. The reality is that harshness is what we have to deal with and what we have to live with on a daily basis. So if we're going to talk about it on a medium platform, I'm not going to whitewash it. We need to be honest about these. And this is where the media and the gatekeeping and the government gatekeeping come in, because we'll like, yes, we'll support and support, but let's not, but don't hold us accountable when we're protecting those in our camps. But also let's not be too harsh because we don't want to be scared people. Yet people are dying. How many more lives need to how many more bodies do we need to bury for you to say that it's not harsh enough?
Mm. Rosie, we're coming to the end of the show. We have like 3 minutes left, but I just want to go back to how Women for Change always
Mm,
says every woman said it will never happen to me.
mm,
Every woman that was posted on there probably also thought it will never happen to me. So let us just be
mm,
conscious of that it can happen to you because of where you're
yeah.
living at the moment and internationally. But I just want you to quickly just touch on how do we get to healing of justice? And you wrote a book
Mm,
called Reclaiming the Soil. So how do we collectively
mm,
and how did you personally heal?
mm. Well, first of all, I need to admit that I'm still healing. because that is the
Okay.
magnitude of the violence of the society that we live in. And, you know, going back to what you were saying about, you know, people saying, well, it could never happen to you. Because of the indoctrination, more than likely, it probably actually has happened to you. And so it's about facing that reality, processing. And I was part of the camp of, you know, don't strike a woman, you strike a rock. Yes, we be resilient and all of that. But for a long time, I forgot that I was human. And so I kept on fighting, fighting, fighting until my body said, okay, calm down. Otherwise, we're going to bury you. So in the process, is it acknowledge the magnitude of what the patriarchy pushes, the magnitude of what the misogynistic ideologies push. And when you need to rest, rest. It's not a sign of weakness. But the most important thing is just to make sure that they haven't won, is that if you take care of your mental wellness and you take care of your body and be gentle on your journey. It's not going to happen in a quick time because there's no blueprint to healing. And
Mm.
because of the magnitude of the different levels of abuse that we've all endured, it's going to take a long time for us to really heal.
Mm. So how did your healing journey begin? Did you go see a psychologist? Did you like what did you do? How
Long
can
time ago,
someone
so
how can
different.
someone start? How do they start healing?
Definitely by finding a space. Psychologists are very expensive, so there are a lot of pro
Mm.
bono spaces. I because now I'm a qualified counselor and life coach, and when I
Really?
have capacity, I offer pro bono through Letsatsi Healing Space Counseling, which is online. But definitely find a platform where you can speak, but acknowledge what has happened to you. And then
Mm.
also look at the ailments that you have. I suffered from fibromyalgia for about 10 years until I'd faced a sexual abuse that had happened to me when I was at university, over and above all the other levels of abuse that I endured. So once I'd processed the rape that had happened to me and processed the fact that it was not my fault, the signs of fibromyalgia hardly ever come up over the last 5 years.
Oh wow.
So
Mm.
listen to your body.
Listen to your body.
Try and find what works for you. Some psychology doesn't work for everybody.
Mm.
Hiking works for some people, yoga, speaking. Find what works for you and find the safe space in which you can operate that in order for your healing.
Rosie, so thank you so much for your time. How can people contact you if they want to get hold of you or send you a message? And what message do you have for this shutdown happening now? You have about 30 seconds.
So you can find me on all social medias, Rosie Motene or Letsatsi Healing Space. I have a website, rosiemotene.biz, Letsatsi Healing Space .info. And in terms of the shutdown, we all need to be turning purple and black and wearing black